Well, I met Dave on a train to France. We were both going to do a signing of a convention with our French publisher, Brejnon. We're an excellent publisher. Stéphane Marsan is here this weekend. He's one of the editors from Brejnon. He's one of my writing heroes. I read every Gamble book, so it's quite a scary thing to meet Dave. And and Stanley, who was a very good friend of his, was coming with us. I was actually sitting somewhere else in the train, quietly shaking away because I knew he was in the carriage behind and that sort of stuff. And then Stank up and said, "You must come down and meet Dave and Stella." So I did, and we headed off. I just found it. I was scared to death. He was a very, very tall, severe-looking man with these sort of hawk features and stuff, and he bores straight into your soul when he talks to you and stuff. And everything he says is laden with meaning and emotion and stuff. And he is a. That's why he was such a great writer, because that's exactly how he writes his books. He wrote the way he was. We just got on very well. We ended up sitting together doing signing and stuff, so it was really fortunate. I feel very privileged to have known him. And then eventually, after that, I went down to stay with him, and then we got to discussing books. And we just developed into a friendship, and then sort of a mental relationship as well. And he was always the guy I could ring up if I was really stuck or I was frustrated, and I would tend to ring up Dave and ask, or send him an email and stuff, and then maybe pop down to his house and spend an evening just chatting through problems. And one day he read out some stuff of his and he said, "What do you think?" Which is the scariest thing that's ever happened. Because he actually wanted my opinion on his, and this is the first, this is one of the opening sequences of the first Troy book. I gave the right answer. You'll be glad to know. It's probably why I'm still standing here. But it was good. I mean, it was good, and it was tragedy. It was cut off. Because I think it would have. I'd loved it to have gone on because he became a very good friend. And he was an absolutely enormous help in A Shout for the Dead. Because I had come to a dead stop, and I did not know how to make my. Apologies for people who haven't read it. Didn't know how to make my Army of the Dead work. They were stupid. They were kind of hack sort of zombies, and they needed something else. They needed something to bring them to life. So something to make them different from what you might see in Resident Evil or whatever zombie flick you want. And I did not want them to be Hollywood zombies, but every twist and turn I made, it came back to the same thing. So I didn't want them to have, they had their heads up, that shouldn't make them stop necessarily. So they need to be impelled by some other power, but I didn't know how to do it. I don't know why, I just got a complete blank about it. I ended up going down to see Dave. This is actually the last time I actually saw him, as it turned out. And he made me sit down and tell him exactly why it was that I was frustrated, exactly what I was frustrated about. And then we just unpicked it and then stitched it back together again. And when I left the next morning, I knew what to do. So yeah, that's how important he was in that book. So I think without that, I'm not sure I could have finished it. Seriously, I didn't know. I was on the verge of walking away from it, so I didn't know how to do it. And I've never been in that position before. So it was brilliant. It was incredibly enlightening and motivating. Because he understands in ways that you don't think he understands. And when he's describing things that he thinks that you might want to do, he lives them. He's talking about power coming through the earth, and he's doing this, and sitting in his chair. It's fantastic. So he was a huge help and a disaster, personally and professionally, and for every reader of fantasy when he died. Frankly.
Yeah. I mean, would you go back to this endless? It was originally short.
I think it's unlikely, actually. I think there might be short stories and novellas in it, but I don't know.
Because you've had the idea for quite a long while, haven't you?
Ages, yeah, since I was at college. I've had it since I think I first journal idea when I was at college would have been 1987. So yeah, for a long time. I don't know what it was, but I kind of knew that it was a big idea, and I knew I didn't know how to write it. And for whatever reason, I just kept it on the back burner and left it, because I knew how to write the Raven at that time, so that's what I was doing, and just let it develop. And I think it's like, I could argue maybe I should have left another few years to cook, because there are still some things that I would now change. Every author's the same. I think you go back over your old work and you think, I would have done that a bit differently if I had my time again.
Quite a lot of authors say that, particularly when they've had a first book or first few books that are very effective, very, very well. Asimov, for example. later in his life when he was writing Foundation, which everybody is sort of best science fiction books of all time. He often used to feel quite upset because people would say, the very Foundation is brilliant. And he would say, yes, thank you very much, appreciate that, but I wrote it in 1950. What about the work since?
Yeah.
And you can sort of see most authors, I think, tend to feel that they're making progress, they're developing.
Yes. Well, I think that was one problem with the Ascendance books, is that I didn't take all the Raven fans with it. I think that was with them. Because they were very different, and they're much more sort of epic and grand and stuff. And I absolutely loved them, but it's quite clear that a good percentage of the people that enjoyed the Raven didn't get into them. Which is fair enough. I mean, you can't please all the people all the time, but the idea was but we have got a new audience for the Ascendants. But in the end, I've been slightly disappointed with the reaction. But you know, I can't control that. I mean, I'm very proud of them, but I think in the end they may be a really slow burn. They still sell okay, but they haven't kind of opened me up to the audience. I was kind of hoping they'd go maybe like. So, and that's maybe because they're too big and too long.
I mean, I like that the epic. I think the range was really widescreen.
I did go widescreen. It's very widescreen. Yes.
Okay. Let's move on to the book that we talked about with Raven. Favourite character is, as we've already said,
Hiran
Always
Coldheart.
has been.
He always has been, because he was my character. I love a lot of the other characters. I love the Unknown Warrior because he's just such a hard bastard. But just so level-headed and so focused and so honest. But Hiran I love because he's got energy, and he might be arrogant and loud-mouthed and stuff, but he's incredibly brave. Foolhardy in some respects, incredibly brave and incredibly loyal. And the world for him is just black and white. And it makes him actually quite difficult. It makes a very difficult character to play. You know, you're not going to go into a room in the game, there's going to be some nasty bad guys in there, and you know, because that's your character, you're going to knock down the door and go in first, so you could die at any moment. That's kind of what I wanted to bring into the book about him too, that he would just do it. But he would make mistakes.
Yeah.
And he makes a lot of mistakes. He can break rank, or he can do the wrong thing, and he says the wrong thing, punches the wrong person, you know, that sort of stuff. What I love about him is he's just so alive. And that's why he's the favourite. He's got everything. And a decent line banter as well. He does okay.
And I think that's one of the strengths of the Raven books. You know, you talk about them, they're very much like a family.
Yes, that's the idea.
Bitter and they fall out, but ultimately it's that sort of.
I mean, they had to think that they spend, you know, when you meet them, most of them have been together for 10 years, so they have to have that familiarity. And I think some people found it hard to get into because their speech is quite clipped and quick.
Yeah.
As a result, a bit like old mates sitting around the table in the pub. You know, that's kind of how it is. So until you've got into that, the rhythm of that, I think it can possibly be quite hard to read. I don't know, I never found it so, of course, but I think that's been a criticism level at the dialogue. But I think people need to understand that these aren't strangers when you meet them. So what I did is I look back on how I am with my oldest friends and how we speak and the stuff you just know about each other unconsciously, and that's how and it informs the way you talk. And I think the Raven had to have that, or else they would have appeared stiffer.
We're now looking to move back to the Raven.
Yes, well, we have moved back to Raven for one night only, so to speak. It's funny, Demon Storm was the end of the Raven, as anyone that's read Demon Storm knows. But I had another idea, but I wasn't always ever going to write it. But it was one of those that just grew, and we kind of wanted a coda, if you like, to kind of to wrap stuff up. Although